Should we start?
Yeah.
Yeah, awesome. So let's start. So today I'm going to talk about something called Redux-Rewire, right? It's a state management library specifically built for React, and this is built to serve large-scale application. We will come into more detail what do I mean by a large-scale application. Let's move forward, yeah? A little introduction. So I'm Bishal Biswas, and currently I'm working as a senior front-end engineer at Frankfurt. Those of you who don't know about Frankfurt is an application. It's a sport aggregated platform where any content related to any sports you can find it here. Yeah. Cool. Let's move ahead. Okay, let's start with what is Redux-Rewire, right? What I'm talking about. So as I said, it's a state management library for React, right? But it's built on top of Redux. So basically a wrapper on top of Redux, just like Redux-Rewire, right? But much more, basically it can handle a large scale application, and that's very important. We built this Redux-Rewire keeping performance in mind. It's very performance oriented, and at the same time, it takes care of developer experience, because when you're working at a large team, because in a large scale application, there's a huge team you're working with, and it's very important that you keep a very good developer experience when you are choosing your library, right? So that everything goes smooth. Cool. We'll go into more details on both of those stuff. Okay. Okay, before going ahead, let me give a little bit of background, about how we started Redux-Rewire. So this is 2022. Basically, Frankfurt, we are currently having more than 1 million daily active users, so that's huge, right? And at this scale, we really wanted something, a library which can solve all our use cases. Basically, what I'm going to talk about is all the challenges which we face at such scale, right? And this is very Frankfurt oriented, but I'm sure at industry-wise, this is very much applicable. Yeah. So let's see what are the challenges which we faced, which resulted into Redux-Rewire. Yeah. First is structured framework. Now, a bit vague, but I talk more detail about what do I mean by a structured framework. Okay. Let's go ahead. So basically, a guided approach to maintain code quality. Now, this is very important. You see, whenever you are choosing a library, right? Given circumstances like a Redux or even take a React, right? It's a framework, it's a library, and in JavaScript world, you get lots of flexibility, right? Basically, the same structure, the same code, you can write it multiple ways, and that's the beauty of it, definitely, right? And that helps a lot. Initial stages, it gives you a lot of flexibility, and everyone can chip in and start working on it. But when you go into scale, it doesn't help, right? Because you have a huge team, and if everyone is writing code in their own way, then keeping everyone in sync is very difficult. So at scale, you do need a guided approach, a specific way to write the code, or a specific way to structure your code or structure your state, right? And that's what you need, and that was our initial target, to have a guided approach to maintain the code quality. Yeah. Next is easy to review. Again, if you have a guided and structured approach, then it becomes very easy to review the code, because again, when you have a big team, reviewing becomes very much important. And if the structure is maintained, everyone knows how to write the code, even the reviewer will know how the code is written, and it will be very easy for him to read and review it, right? And it will be quick to send it to production. Next is reducing learning curve. This is also very important, because in an organization, people come and go, right? So you are getting new joiners all the time, and these new joiners are, they should learn your code structure very quickly, so that they can adopt and start coding and build things, right? Because in a startup, you need to quickly disrupt features. That's very, very important. And that's why we built this Redux-Rewire to keep that in mind. It should be very easy to adopt, so that your learning curve reduces a lot. So this is what I wanted to discuss on the structure framework. We will see how we have solved this problem. There is one more problem, which is supporting complex data exchanges. Now, when you build things at scale, you will face this problem a lot. Now, what do I mean by that? When you build applications, especially in a product-based industry, right? So, basically, like in Vancouver, we have 15 developers working on, a single project. We have a single app, right? So there's a lots of people working on the same thing, right? And what happens is like there are many features which you have built, but you are continuously going to iterate on them because it's a single product, right? You are continuously iterating and finding the right market fit. And when you do that, basically, initially you build your component in certain way, right? Basically, you still keep future in mind, and you make sure your state management is much more futuristic, and you can easily adopt any new changes. But when continuous iteration comes in, at some point it will happen that your state you are not able to manage, right? So you may have to rewrite stuff, rethink how your state should be for that specific component. And rewriting things can be very difficult at sometimes because it's time consuming, right? So in at scale, you may have to get a library which gives you a lot more control on doing this complex stuff, like lot more hooks and advanced hooks, so that you can manage these adoptions very easily, even if you have not think it before. And some of the example would be, data flow between parent and child. So this is very simple. We all know we have to do a data flow between parent and child, but I would say these use cases like data flow between siblings, right, and data flow between distinct components which do not have a same parent. These also arises because you have to dish out code faster, and you should have a state management library which takes care of all these use cases, right? And that's what we had in mind. Yeah. So these two challenges majorly we want to focus on today. Yeah. Okay. Before moving ahead, let's understand why we choose Redux, right? So when we went in and we thought, okay, we will choose a library, right? We went through a lot of options, Vista and Redux, Toolkit and stuff like that. And what we found, right, that we wanted to use Redux itself for various reasons. Let's go through that. Firstly, it's a pattern cluster. It's been used by lots of applications, even Amazon using it, right? So if pattern tested, we know it's going to work in production. Second, it's very easy to onboard people. Any new joiner comes in, mostly they have a very good idea or at least some idea about what Redux is. So it will be very easy to onboard them. Next, it's very flexible. Now this is a good and a bad thing, like I said, right? Since Redux is very flexible, again you have to build structure around it so that you can use it in a very specific way for your use cases, for your company, for your organization, so that you follow certain guidelines, right? So you have to use some kind of wrapper on top of it. And Redux being a barebone tool, you can do that, right? So that's why we chose Redux. Next is server-side rendering. It does support it, and that helps a lot. We do need it. Next is community support. Definitely, Redux has very big community support, and we constantly get updates on that. So that's why we wanted to keep it that way. Now, we at the end we chose Redux, but we have to go ahead of it, right? Redux was not enough. We needed some kind of wrapper on top of it for our use cases, and we were facing some challenges in Redux definitely. Firstly, like I said, it's a barebone tool. You cannot directly use it. You need to have some wrapper. Otherwise, if you're using it in barebone, then everyone is going to use the Redux in their own way. They are going to manage in their own way. We don't want that because it becomes very difficult in a big deal. So we needed add-ons definitely. Right. First is Redux Toolkit. We saw if we can use these Redux Toolkit. Basically, whoever uses Redux currently it comes with Redux Toolkit. So that's an add-on by default coming in, right? So that's a challenge for us. Maintaining two things. Should we do that? That's what we thought. Next is Thunk. Again, you have to do some async action, that is side effects. Async await. Those functionality you need to be incorporated, and you have to use an additional Thunk or similar plugins to do those things, right? And these add-ons, add up the boilerplate. Type safety. Now in Vancouver, type safety is very important for us. From day one, we are using TypeScript for sure. and we wanted to make sure any actions we are performing, any reducers we have, any state we are using anywhere, everything should be type safe, and it should be as inferred as possible. At as many less code you write for types, that's very important. You initialize state at one places, everywhere it should get inferred. That's a type safety, right? It's not like everywhere you have to import that state type and then using it. So that's what we wanted, and of course, if you want to do it in Redux, you need to use some add-ons for that as well. And lastly, the data exchanges use cases like I explained before, right? Basically, between siblings and even distinct components which are not even related to each other. How do you make data exchanges between them? Because at some point you may get a feature where you have to do that, right? We wanted. So these were the challenges we were facing with Redux, and we went and seek inspiration from Redux-Rewire. We found that it has already solved many of the use cases which we were looking for, but still there was some missing. Let's see what Redux-Rewire does, right? This is a simple piece of code, okay, of Redux-Rewire, as you can see. Now, if you see, we have an initial state defined here, yeah, and then if you see, they have given an option called create slices. Now, this is very important. When you are building a large-scale application, you need your code to be as modular as possible, right? So this option of giving create slices, which is like a separate module which can be part of a specific component and do not have to be it will be very independent from any other component, and that helps from this create a slice function which toolkit is giving us. Now again, you have to define the name of your state, basically the initial state you have to pass, and then these are all your reducers. Basically, any operations you want to perform on the state, you do it here. Basically, increment, and stuff like that. Now, what happens is, after doing this, what you have to do is you have to import this slice which you have created and import it here, which is your configure store. Now, configure store is definitely something which is present on your root directory. Now, this is something we found a little bit difficult. Every time you have to any component you create, any slices you create, you have to import it in the common store, and quickly your common store can become bloated. As soon as we have like hundreds of components currently in fan code, and importing it here could be very cumbersome, and it will literally bloat your configure store, right, at root level. Okay. Secondly, if you want to use the slices in your view, this is basically a view example. You can see this is a counter function, and if you want to use the state, you have to use view selector. Now here also, if you see, like we are importing types, state dot root state. We wanted this to be inferred, right? Why we have to continuously import it from other places and then use it. Okay. Then again, here if you see, we are saying state dot counter when we shouldn't be, right? We have already know that this slice what we are using is already named as a counter. Again, if basically here I am getting the whole root state, basically the whole Redux state I am getting, and then I have to remove the specific value which I wanted from that whole global state, basically, right? And this is not very helpful. It's kind of boilerplate. And same thing with dispatch. Every time you have to create this dispatch function, and whenever you are to trigger a reducer dispatch an action, you have to always write this dispatch function and then import the increment from here, as you can see in this file, and then call it, right? And this also is not every time type safe, so that becomes a problem as well. You guys can see, yeah. So we wanted to resolve all these problems. We wanted to make this simplified, right? And just like I discussed all the problem, right? Like bloated configure state, a subpool of modular component. Even though this is modular, but as you can see, I have to still import it at other places in configure store. And here also separate reducer and actions I have to import it separately to use them, like an increment, right? So we didn't feel that it's modular enough. We can do it much better. There's one more thing is like the implementation way of using use selector. Use selector is always giving you the global state, and you need to find your specific component state from it, right? So that's not very helpful. We wanted to make it much more quicker. Next is repetitive use of dispatch. Can we get rid of it? It's again a boilerplate, right? Even this smaller things, you're building, like you have 50 people, these are small things. When they, do not have to do this, they become very efficient because your developer has to worry about your application logic rather than thinking about how to write code. He do not have to worry about these things. That's what you do when you reach your at scale, right? This is what you solve for, right? Okay. Next is again asymmetric support. If you see Redux toolkit already support thumb, but using it is even more difficult. Even I have not included in the example because it's even more difficult to showcase. So I think we can do it much better. And lastly, exactly. Now enough of that. Let's see how Redux-Rewire does this. Yeah. Okay. Is it visible? Okay, so firstly, like always, we have to initialize a state. We have a function for that as well. So we have a function for doing everything. We make sure we create a wrapper for everything so that we can, do add-ons to it in data statements, right? So we have a function for creating initial state as well, which is called create initial state. There is an identity key. This is just a key for an advanced use cases. We recommend to put here the file name itself. Nothing to worry about. And then your initial state, which is like value, like the counter value, this is the initial value. Then what you do is basically what we believe is composition. So what we have created, what we have initialized previously, we will pass it for our next initialization. So next we are going to initialize our reducer slice. Again, you see everything is modular. You can keep initial state and reducer slice in your separate files. That's what we do currently in fan code, or you can keep it in the same file that you want. So we are making it modular. Nextly, composition. If you see, so next, if we are initializing our reducer, we are passing our initial state from above. So that's that composition. So that's our first argument for this function. This function is again coming from Redux toolkit, which is create reducer slice. And then we have the map, which is our reducer map. This is similar to what we have, a simple reducer, which is implement by, you are getting a state, you are getting an action data. This is an action data. Basically, whenever you call in this action, you can pass the number of count you want to implement it by. And that you can use it here to manipulate your state and return the state. Now, the state is mutable because we are using input in the background, and that's why it's possible to do it. As in, we believe this is much. Sorry, bro. This is just an image, so very difficult to do that. But I will show you in the code. Don't worry. Once I complete this, I will show you the code as well. Yeah. Next is action slice. Actually, I will show you the code. Visible? So, as I was saying, this is our initial state, create initial state, just a key and our initial value. Then, as I said, you have a reducer slice, right? And you are passing the previous initialized value here, and then you have a map, right? The reducer map, everything is type safe, as you can see, it's already named. The value here, the state you are getting, that's also already type safe. The count, basically this is action data, so you define your type here, and whenever you are calling implement by, you are by default going to get that as a type safety. This is your reducer slice, and then you have an action slice. So as you can see, like everything is modular. So we have created initial state first, then we are creating reducer, but this is very important because then we have created action slice as well. So this performs all your side effects. So you can use it as simple as this. So what we have done is like you can import this function, create action slice, pass the reducer slice which you got previously, again composition, yeah, and then you just like reducer, you create a map which is an action map, and you can have same function or different function, whichever you want. So we had implement by previously. We can define the same key here as well. So what will happen is, since it's a composition, whenever you're calling implement by function, basically action, it will perform your reducer action first, and then it will come here to execute this. So it's a composition. How that's helpful, because suppose when you are implementing your counter, maybe you want to save that in your database as well, right? So what you can do is, once you are implementing your counter, you can make a put call, right, and pass that value to your backend to get it saved, right? And that's very helpful. So what happens is, like in props, so this function you have, this is an async function. It takes in it gets two argument. One is count. Count is again type safe by default. This is your action data, and second is your props. Props has many things inside it. Currently, what we are using from it is state, which is already type safe. And so this is your updated state. After your releaser completes this function, updates the state, that's what you get here. So you are basically passing the updated state to your backend. Yeah. So you can just make an await call here, use promises, anything you want, and then you get a response. Now what happens, like sometimes when you get the response, you want to do more things using it. For example, in this case, you are making a put call, but for some reason there is an error, and backend is not able to put this in the database. So what will you do, right? So for example, if the response is not okay, maybe you want to reset the value in your UI. How you can do that? It's very simple. What we have done is, like inside the prop, we have given all the actions which is present in your reducer here itself. You can access it right away. So as you can see, props.action, reset count, both are available. Reset count, implement by, whichever you want to call, you can call, and it's also type safe. This cannot be a string. It will always give you error because you have already defined it as a number. So everywhere is type safe. So what happens is, like from your action you can actually call another action, and that's what you want. It makes it composable, and this is very helpful when you are building an application. Yeah, doing this in Redux toolkit is very difficult to do. Yeah? That's what we have solved here. Now we have created an action slice. These are just initialization. Now we will come to our actual view, which is like counter, right? Now this is also very simple to do. What we have is like one more hook we call use rewire state. Yeah, and here you give a property which will be a key against which your state will be saved in Redux. Okay, we will see it in the logs as well. And again, just like composition, what we have defined action size previously, we will pass it here, and that's it. And lastly, you have a selector. So selector is basically again, you have to select specific from the state. Here, as you can see, it's not giving you the global state, but the specific state that you want, the component state itself, right? So you can just take the value out of it and you get it here, and you can display it right away. That's simple. So one hook is with everything. It's initializing the store for you. It's attaching it to the configure store. You do not have to export anything and put it in the configure store. Nothing like that. It's all inbuilt inside this hook itself. And not only that, you get an action. This is the third argument that you get, which is actions. And using this, you can call all the reducers function which you have created. Basically, implement by and reset count. That's what we have created inside our reducer. It's already available. It's type safe. It's action data is type safe. So all this is available. You can directly call it. It's that simple. Yeah. So that's what we are doing with Redux-Rewire. Cool. One last thing, how do we configure the store? As we see previously, like in Redux toolkit, we have to put everything in the configure store, and that's very cumbersome, right? But in Redux-Rewire, it's not important at all. You just create an empty initial reducer, empty initial state, and that's all. You do not have to touch this line ever. That's it. And definitely, we have kept all the APIs of Redux right there. We can attach any middleware you want because the code it is Redux. Yeah. Complex data use cases, right? Now this is so basically until now what we have solved is our first problem, which is having a structured format to your code base, and that's what we did. We have made sure that everything is in structured way, right? This code can be written in this way only. That's what we wanted, so that everything is following this pattern itself. So it's very readable, and we know how people are manipulating the state and how they are doing their side effects, right? And that's what we have achieved with this. But secondly, we also want to make sure all our complex data exchanges use cases, those are also covered. And for that, we have some advanced hooks available with us. there are two. One is use global state, and second is use share state. Now global state, that's very important because sometimes you have like authentication store where you keep all your authentication related state, and that you want to be global because at multiple components in your application, that state is going to get used. So that's what we use global state for. Share state is very helpful. Like I said, two components which are very distinct or two components which are sibling, they can create a share state between those two components itself, and they can share that state between them, and it's very helpful. Right? I'll show you an example quickly. Again, visible. So first part is very same. Like we are creating an authentication store here. So we have create initial state. We have reducer slice. We have action slice. In the action slice, if you see, I've done something very similar. So. Okay, so in action slice, I've done something very simple, which is in the mount. One more advantage with global store is basically your mount gets auto-called. Whenever you are calling your global state for the first time, this mount is going to get auto-called, so that you can start performing your actions right away. For example, in this on mount, I do wanted to attach a listener to my authentication state, so that whenever user is logging on or logging out. This is a Firebase SDK. It's going to give me a callback, and whenever it's giving me a callback, what I'm doing is I'm calling another reducer and updating my login states. As you can see here, basically user is logged in or logged out. So this becomes very simple to use. Again, you can use async here, or you can just use any callbacks. It's always available for you to call any actions afterwards as well. So now we have created outstore. So creating this global state, you have to use this another function called create global state, and you have to pass a key. So we always prefer to use a star in front of this key, so that you know that when you are seeing the text code, you know that this is a global state. And then using it is very simple. You can just use global state, import this outstore, and use the selector, and that's it. You get your login state right away. Just do it in your UI. Same with logout. In logout, maybe you just want the action. You don't want to listen to your state. You can just keep an empty state selector, but still use the actions for logout. So basically, on your button click, you can just click all logout, and that will easily change your state of logout. And in other components also, it will get easily click. So that's example of global state. Share state quickly. This is also very similar to global state, but with additional twist, which is that global state is constant for your whole application, but share state can be grown. Because many different components can use it in very different way, and they want to have. Suppose there are you have a list of views, right? So every list item can use its own share state. Since it's a list, everyone needs to clone it, because the logic should not be, you don't have to clone that logic or copy paste that logic. You can just write it once, and this feature can easily help you clone it. I'll show you how it works. So for example, we have something called refresh control, right? So if you remember, in most of the application, suppose you are in home page, you can do equal to refresh, right? So that's a functionality. And in this case, maybe you want to keep a state whether the page is refreshing or not. So which you can do basically using is refresh state value basically. Now, for example, you have multiple screen in your application. Like it's a home page, there's a checkout page. Home page will have equal to refresh, but its state should be different from the checkout page. Checkout page will also have equal to refresh, right? So both can use this code, but again they want to clone it because they don't want they want to make sure that their state is not dependent on each other. They should be independent, right? And how do we do that? Very simple. So we have created initial state, we have created reducer to update our state, action slice, and we can use this function again, create state, share state. As you can see here, we are taking a partial key. So that's the only difference between a global state and a shared state. That this takes a partial key instead of full key. Now you get a refresh code out of this, and now in your home view you can use this using use share state. This is again a hook, and you can pass the another shared key. Basically, a partial key was present here, which is refresh, and you are passing one more key here. So what it will do is it will create a new state in your Redux using these two keys. Basically, it will say refresh plus hope becomes your new state. Right? That becomes your key, and it will save your state in that. So that way it helps so you can, your home page will have a totally different state, and in your checkout page will have a totally different page because your shared is different. Right? So that's how. So these two basically advanced hooks helps us a lot for all our data. I think we are almost on the end. With the demo, I think I have already did ready for you guys. So this is a simple to-do list, right? And you can check the code quickly. Okay, so we have simple main application, and in this, what we are doing is we have created a state or basically a Redux state, which app is using. As you can see, we use Redux state with a key, and this using this basically we have a user thread which is called our mount. And inside our mount, all we are doing is basically making our API call. As you can see here, we are touching our to-dos, and after we got the response, we are just saving it in our response with this reducer. Yeah? And then we have two more things, which is to-do list and to-do item. Yeah? Those are just views. So how it looks basically. So now I'm already enabled logs here as well, as you can see. So firstly we have created a mount, then mount has done some action. So basically we have performed some IO action which was a promise. We made an API call, and then we got a response. So that also we can see that these are the response we got. And previous visible. So as I was saying, whenever so we were what we were doing is we had a reducer of app response if we see our previous state. So what Redux-Rewire did is like he created a key of app and it kept your initial state here. But when you updated your state in your next state, you can see that app to do has already been updated, which we can see here. Yeah. So that's very simple example of how it works. Just a quick summary, what we did here. Basically, Redux-Rewire again written on top of Redux. We do support incremental store. It's very modular. Every component is very independent. You are just going to export your view from your component, nothing else. All our raw state is encapsulated on that component itself. Right? Nothing else is dependent on it. We did cover most of the data exchange use cases. We did solve first class support for async action. That's very important. We did see type safety all the way at all places. We have one more advanced hook I would like you to see, check it out in our website, and which is use parent state. We specifically built it to avoid any kind of prop dealing we are doing, because prop dealing is something we found can cost you performance a lot, right? So you can avoid prop dealing altogether with this Redux-Rewire. And then server-side rendering, does support server-side rendering all the time. Test first approach, this is very important. At code, we do write unit test of everything before you write the code. So that's very important. And we do support test approach, and all our reducers and actions are testable, and you can see those examples in our report. Some of the resources we have, this is properly open source. We are using it in our production for the past 2 years, and it's working well for us. This is our NPM, the documentation, how to get started, the repo, and some of the logs we have on top of it. Thank you. Thank you for listening.